Well, speaking of workplaces and getting to and from them, bus fares will go up by the end of this year. At the moment, the government puts £350 million of taxation into subsidising bus fares to have a cap of £2. That is going to rise to £3. If you work and take the holidays you're entitled to, most people, you're going to be hit with a bill of £450 a year. I'm going to find out what Sir John Redwood thinks of that in just a second, but let's remind ourselves of what the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, announced today, the bus fare cap rising at the end of this year.
On the £2 bus fare, first thing to say is the Tories only funded that till the end of 2024, and therefore that is the end of the funding in relation to the £2 capped fare. I do know how much this matters, particularly in rural communities where there's heavy reliance on buses. And that's why I'm able to say to you this morning that in the budget we will announce there'll be a £3 cap on bus fares to the end of 25, because I know how important it is. So that'll be there in the budget on Wednesday.
Well, one MP who has a rural constituency is Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown. He says a lot of people in his area rely on buses. This is what he said about an hour ago in this programme.
People in my type of rural constituency are going to be hit much harder because they've got no alternative but to take probably the one bus a day to get them to their work or to their hospital appointment. Yes, it's absolutely right that it's hitting the poorest people, it's hitting poor working class people very hard indeed. And I think, as I said earlier, I think it's just the wrong priority. What we should be doing is, if he needs to raise taxes, don't hit some of the poorest people in the country with these tax rises.
Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown speaking to me a little bit earlier. Well, the former Conservative MP, Sir John Redwood, joins me now. John, what do you make of this?
Well, this is another dreadful, disastrous decision ahead of and part of a budget, which is clearly backfiring. It's incredibly mean, and as you've already had comment to say, it's taking money away from the people who don't have very much to start with at a time when the cost of living has gone up a lot in the previous couple of years and is just beginning to come under control. So why suddenly make this big attack on them? And this is a government which says it's got 19 billion to spend on carbon capture and storage, very dubious technology which the Greens don't like. This is a government which won't talk to the Governor of the Bank of England about the tens of billions that he's still losing on selling bonds when he needn't be selling the bonds. He could copy the ECB and lose rather less money. So they've got tens of billions to spend on things we don't want or are of dubious value, and they don't have a few £100 million to help the pensioners either with their fuel or with their bus fares. I think it's just dreadful.
We should say that bus passes do seem to be continuing, but there are so many people. I mean, John, you're the economist and the money man and the person who knows maths backwards, but if you take 8 bank holidays a year, you go to work 5 days a week, there and back, £6 a day, Monday to Friday, and you take 5 weeks holiday a year, you're going to be hit by something like £454 a year. I mean, that is just another thing within the context of a cost of living crisis for working people, people who take the bus, people who do the jobs that need to be done. And how does that fit into growth as well, if you're saying to people, actually, we're going to charge you more to get to and from work?
Well, no, it's another attack on work, as you rightly say, because their employers are going to have a big increase in the tax they pay for everybody they employ. So they'll be looking to employ fewer people. And then the people who are trying to get to work on low incomes are getting this extra imposition on the cost of trying to get to work. You would have thought that they were strong believers in the bus. They don't like us using cars very much. They want people to use public transport. Some people have got to use public transport in the way we've been describing. So this is bad, bad, bad. And it's all such small sums of money for the government compared with the billions and tens of billions that they're pouring into other things of much more dubious value.
I mean, £350 million a year, just put that in context for us, John. You know these budgets back to front. I mean, £350 million a year is nothing in the context of a budget.
No, it's not really a sum that a Chancellor or a Prime Minister should be spending any time on. It's the kind of decision that a Transport Secretary or Transport Minister makes within a much bigger budget. And you want the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to concentrate on the tens of billions and to get the big numbers right, and it seems this government can't get the big numbers right. It wants to increase taxes by somewhere between 20 and 40 billion, we read, which is the wrong thing to do if you want a growth strategy, and it's particularly bad if you're targeting people of enterprise, people who want to invest, people who want to save, and above all, people who want to employ people. And then on the spending, as I say, you've got the 19 billion that they have volunteered to put into carbon capture and storage, which they needn't do or needn't do on anything like that scale. They could have a trial project at a much more modest amount. And these huge losses by the Bank of England, and someone else has put out a good pamphlet today, I think, saying that if they worked a bit harder and more imaginatively at helping more people into work, that would make huge savings on benefits and start to get more tax revenue because more people are in work. These are the big things that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister need to be concentrating on. Big vision, control the budget deficit by getting rid of the wasteful spending, and then you'll have a bit of extra money for the things that we really need, and you certainly won't need to clobber the pensioner, both making it very difficult for low-paid pensioners to keep warm and making it very difficult for people on low incomes to get to the shops or for the younger ones to get to work.
The Prime Minister earlier also set out what his government's first budget will look like. A lot of ministers, including Ellie Reeves, who's the chairwoman of the Labour Party, said she couldn't speculate, but the Prime Minister can speculate, and this is a bit more of what he said earlier today.
But the budget the Chancellor will deliver on Wednesday will prevent devastating austerity in our public services and prevent a disastrous path for our public finances. That's the reality of what would happen if we'd stuck to Tory spending plans.
It'll prevent devastating austerity. What do you make of that line from him, John?
Well, I think Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has been more accurate. He has made speeches pointing out the last 5 years has seen a very large amount of extra money going to the health service, way ahead of the increase in inflation. And he was the one who was saying, well, before we put any more money into the health service, we need to get the reform to make sure we spend the money really wisely. So what happened to that mantra? The last government put up public spending by considerably more than prices. Not all of it was well spent. We now have a government saying it wants to spend a lot of money rather unwisely in the way I've already identified, and it's going to put a load of money into public services we all want and cherish before it's come up with the reforms which its own health secretary said were essential to make sure we spent the money well.
Sir John, thank you for your analysis there. That's Sir John Redwood, the former Conservative MP.